How can organizations support these types of employees specifically who may not see themselves initially as these tech workers, but now they suddenly need data and AI fluency?
It's important that the technologist still continues to understand it and grows with it because it helps their job. But as we mentioned, AI is fundamentally changing how we all do work.
AI is also reshaping the learning process itself. So how is learning different in the AI era?
It is changing on a daily basis, and I'll hit on sort of two portions of that because there's two different lenses. One is changing how we learn.
Welcome to Tech Transformed, the podcast that explores how technology is reshaping the enterprise landscape. I'm your host, Christina Stathopoulos, founder of Dare to Data. In this episode, we're tackling a global challenge that I actually care deeply about. It's closing the AI and data skills gap. As a big proponent of education and upskilling, I spend a lot of my own time running trainings, and I always like to enforce that technology alone is never enough. Many companies rush into AI today. They're hoping for these quick returns, but without investing in your people, those investments will quickly fall short. So, to explore how organizations can close this gap, I'm joined by Gary Eimerman, Chief Learning Officer at Multiverse, a platform that helps organizations build capability through coach supported learning and apprenticeships. And interestingly, a new analysis from them at Multiverse shows just how fast things are changing. 2/3 of their AI apprentices come from non-technical roles. Nurses, librarians, surveyors, doctors, and even retail staff are becoming a part of what we can call an invisible AI workforce as AI adoption spreads far beyond the tech teams. And while it's true that this data comes from a study in the UK, I can see that the trend is global. Organizations everywhere are increasingly using AI tools in roles that traditionally had little connection to data. And with millions of jobs worldwide vulnerable to technological disruption, reskilling is no longer this nice to have, it's a necessity. So let's get right to it. Gary, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you here today because we get to speak about a topic that sits very close to my heart. But before we dive in, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you and your team do at Multiverse?
Yeah, thank you, Christina, for having me.
Of course.
Gary Eimerman, Chief Learning Officer at Multiverse. I've been in the tech skills transformation, workforce transformation space for about 2 decades now. It's been crazy to see all the waves, but here at Multiverse, our team is really focused on creating the experience, the learner experience that helps drive the shift in behavior and actual utilization and adoption of the technology that enterprises and large organizations around the UK are utilizing.
Perfect. Well, awesome. Like I said, it's great to have you on. I'm really excited about this conversation. To start us off, I always like to begin by addressing the problem. So, what are the main challenges organizations are facing when they're trying to build this AI and data ready workforce? And also, why do you think this has become such a critical issue right now?
Yeah, and I think you hit a little bit on this right at the beginning in your intro. One of the things is you can't just deploy software today and expect to get the return on it. The reality is you have to actually focus on the humans and the change of behavior because while a lot of technology has been historically about enhancing processes, so it's made it easier. It's made it where you don't have to write something down on paper, put it in a filing cabinet. You have storage on a centralized device and things like that, or you have access to it in different ways that you didn't have before. The AI revolution that's happening right now within the workplace is actually changing the way we work. And so that's a completely different mindset that you have to have. And you have to have your people actually thinking about the problem differently. You can get some productivity gains by just implementing the AI software and tools that exist over your current workflows. But the reality is you actually have to get the best out of it. You have to think about the workflow entirely, your org design, everything. And so that's one of the reasons why this is becoming so critical now is it's not just sitting in the IT department. You're actually doing this across the entire organization, and its change is always the constant, but also always the hardest thing to do with people.
Yeah, these are some really big challenges, and I'm seeing what you're saying. I'm seeing repeated for others the challenges that they're facing. Like you said, it's not just about it's not just about buying the tools and implementing the technology, but there's a people element, and I think that's the biggest barrier, the biggest blocker that companies are dealing with today. Now, I know that at Multiverse, one of the ways that you tackle these challenges is through a skills first approach. So, what exactly does that mean, and why is that so important?
Perfect. So this is critical because let's be real. There's been a lot of learning for learning's sake over the years. And that's not actually helpful. That like just having access to a library and having the checkbox does not actually drive the change that you're doing. So if you think about it from why am I investing in skill development in the first place? I'm trying to create a new future, a new way of working, a new outcome that I'm not able to do with the current team that I have today. So the first thing that we do is a diagnosis. We actually want to understand from a business perspective, what do you actually need to accomplish? And then we also do a diagnosis of the individuals. What are the skills that exist? And then really understand the gaps of this. And a lot of times people have done this in a moment in time. We actually try to do this continually, and we do it through what we call multiplayer mode, where basically managers and leaders throughout the organization are all able to share their things. And then through the power of AI and our models internally, we're able to actually synthesize all that information and really understand, okay, great. Based on what Christina thinks and what Gary thinks and what John and Jane all think, this is what you actually need. Then here's what you actually have from a learner and a talent perspective. And then it's really about the prescription of getting the people on the right programs. So they're not just going into a library and going off and searching wherever it might be. And then ultimately the treatment, which is the actual learning experience and the skill development. We focus on project first. So you've got the skills first focus, but then in the actual learning, it's a project-based thing. You're getting on the job focused learning. So you're applying it from day one. And so instead of creating hello world apps or whatever it might be, you're literally saying like, hey, I need to create a dashboard that helps my team understand where our learners are throughout the learning progress. We use this internally as well. And so it's so critical to make sure that you're actually applying that knowledge instantly, because that helps retention. It also helps return on investment. You're not just going through the motions to learn something.
Yeah, I like the multiplayer mode. I immediately thought of a video game. But what's interesting is that when you talk about a skills first approach, a big part of that is learning by doing. It's not
Mhm.
just learning in theory, right? And I see this happen all the time in my own work that the traditional training, it's not going to stick because it's not applied. That's what you're speaking about. So how can companies learn how can they make learning more hands-on and relevant enough that the employees actually change how they work, because that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to not them just to learn, but to apply those learnings on the job and change their workflow.
Yeah. So this is the power of really the apprenticeship learning model. It's existed for centuries at this point in time. There's a reason for it existing for as long, is because humans actually just learn and create more value by learning on the job. And so what you really are focused on, like I mentioned with, is the project focused approach. We're not creating generic projects that everyone gets the same project. We're working with each individual on program. And I think this is so important for companies to think about this. What do I actually need this person to do in this new world? What is the outcome? What is the things that they're building or doing that are different from today? And help them. So the apprenticeship manager and the apprenticeship really partner together with our coaches to define what that future state could look like. And then they create that project, and then all the teaching happens within that project. So instead of learning about the ethics and data control that it has to be a focus of AI applications and workflows, we're sitting here saying like, okay, here's how you're going to protect your company and your customer data as you build out this dashboard or as you build out this automation app and things like that. And so this is truly critical to transforming like that theoretical knowledge that we all can consume and do consume a lot, but to actually turn it into that real world impact and change the day-to-day operations.
Okay, so you have like this almost like this North Star metric, and they're working towards that. And
So,
everything that they're learning, that they're doing as apprentices as well, it's it's with that North Star metric in mind, how they're reshaping the way that they work, right? And I think there's another dimension to this that I would like to explore. A lot of the focus on AI and data skills goes to backgrounds like mine, data scientists and engineers. But your latest analysis shows that AI adoption is accelerating in non-technical roles. So that can be like frontline public service, service workers to healthcare, education, even construction workers. So how can organizations support these types of employees specifically who may not see themselves initially as these tech workers, but now they suddenly need data and AI fluency? And how can we help them build the confidence to use such tools? I think that's another big thing, because me as a trainer and as a professor, it's not just about giving them the skills, but also giving them the confidence to use those skills on the job.
Yep, you nailed it on the head. And I think you mentioned in the opening that our recent research is that actually 2/3 of those that are upskilling on AI right now are in non-technical roles. It's important that the technologist still continues to understand it and grows with it because it helps their job. But as we mentioned, like AI is fundamentally changing how we all do work. You think about, I use Gemini on a daily basis as a thought partner. I use Cassidy and other tools to help create end-to-end to create automated workflows that just take care of that monotonous work that you never want to do, but you need to make sure it gets done. And so when you realize the capabilities of what the technology are unlocking, it's got to go beyond the technologist. Now, you hit it on the head. We have to make sure that we're supporting these individuals in ways that we haven't historically. I mean, some things are like no-brainers. Like you have to create time and space for someone to actually spend and invest on learning. I always say that like learning is just like investing for your retirement. When's the best time to start? It's today because it compounds over time. And so we have to make sure that we're creating that time and space, that we're getting them access to how they learn best. That's the other challenge. We all have different challenges when it comes to learning different knowledge states. And so what we have available, the time we have available, what we know already, those things all come together. And then I think it's really important that we, as leaders, are leading the charge and are sharing how we are learning and bringing people who are learning and driving examples. We do this in our all hands every single month, where we're actually highlighting individuals who have created a new application or workflow or whatever it might be using AI tools. Now, I think we've had sales enablement, product managers, we've had internal admins, all kinds of people. Like, so by highlighting and showing people that it can be done by anyone, and it doesn't have to be someone with a PhD in machine learning, that creates the opportunity and the environment for us all to realize, oh yes, I can use this tool and I can do something different in a way that I haven't been able to before.
That's a really nice, I guess, approach that you're doing within the company that I think others can learn from as well, which is highlighting these projects, these workflows that people have done, and kind of breaking down those barriers as well of like fear, fear to change, fear to make a mistake, to show that, hey, it's not just the engineers, the data scientists that are doing this. Look at our this person in accounting who built this workflow. So I think that definitely could help with the confidence building, right?
Yep.
And so we've talked about it, like supporting these non-technical employees to build confidence and actually use the AI tools is absolutely critical today. But I see that for many organizations, especially when we're considering the leadership level, they're going to be asking about impact. So for leaders looking at metrics like ROI, return on investment, what proof have you seen that investing in data and AI skills leads to measurable results for the business? Are you able to, quantify the impact on things like productivity or maybe the organizational performance, even if you have any use cases that you can share? And I'm very curious to hear about this because sometimes it can be hard to quantify, but I know there's ways to break this down and to show, look, this is the real impact that we're having.
Yep. And this is so critical that you start with that North Star. What are you trying to actually change in the business? So like at the NHS, it's lives saved. That is their North Star metric. So when you're going through and you're developing and saying, hey, I'm going to go train 1,000 people on the newest tool that they can use, great. I want to start with that intention of what's the world going to look like different on lives saved? How are we going to increase that? And so you have to start with understanding what that North Star metric is. So that's step one. Then, like I highlighted, is like you do that learning on the job, because if I'm actually learning on the job and my job is about driving that North Star metric, then obviously the learning and the application of the projects and work and everything is going to help change that. So you have to start there. Internally here at Multiverse, we actually focus on a couple of things. But one of the things that we were looking at this past year was revenue per employee. Like that's a challenge that everyone thinks about during the growth and scale up phase. And so one of the things that we did with our AI transformation, it was both the cultural and the skill focused one. We actually in the last year have increased our revenue per employee by 37%. So when you actually start with that focus, obviously that's not what a frontline manager is then focusing on. They're thinking about, well, how can I create more sales if you're on the sales team, more efficient systems if you're on the operations team, better learning, more engaging learning from a learning team perspective. You focus on all those things that ultimately build up to that North Star metric. And it really came from like the things that we're talking about, upskilling our entire team, doing it on the job, focusing on data and AI tools that really unlock them in their roles, sharing it broadly across the entire organization. Like we have these genius bars that literally sit on different floors in our office, where you have AI experts who at any point in time, anyone in the business can be like, I have an idea. I think I can use AI for this, but I'm not quite sure how. They can go to the genius bar and just talk with the individual and sort of work through a real-time project, utilizing whatever tools the company has available. So I think that's been another really cool example. We've also seen it happen in like not just internally, but like externally with one of our retail partners. They run a national grocery chain, and one of the things that they were trying to focus on was like new starters and just onboarding of new people, because they were hiring a lot of individuals, and you have that ramp time. And that's not valuable to anyone. Honestly, it's not fun for someone new to be sitting there going through all the sessions and everything. And they actually created a automated manual like tool, or automated a manual process for onboarding that resulted in like an additional 218 hours of time savings for their team, not even taking into consideration new starters. So it's just like those are the types of things that you start to see the results for. And I think it's so critical that we do share those specific examples, like the Genius Bar, or like this automation tool that helps sales individuals onboard quickly. Because then all of a sudden it tells us it's possible. It's like that 4-minute mile. No one ran a 4-minute mile, and then someone does, and it's like, okay, great, everyone can run a 4-minute. Not everyone, but a lot more people were able to run 4-minute miles after that point.
I wish I could run a 4-minute mile.
Me too.
The Genius Bar, I love the name of it. I had something very similar. It was about a decade ago when I was a data engineer at a company, and we called it the Guru program. And I was one of them, like helping people. It sounds like a very similar thing where you have people who are like appointed the geniuses in your case, right? And then people can come by at any time if they have an idea or they want to implement something with AI, right?
Yep.
I think this is a fantastic model for other companies to learn from, because I've personally seen how it works, and now you're validating that it works very well within your company too. I love the name of it though. I like the name of the Genius Bar. Now, I think all of this is a strong case for why investing in AI and data skills matters. But I want to flip the coin for a moment, and I want to look at this from another angle, because AI is also reshaping the learning process itself. So how is learning different in the AI era?
Oh, it is changing on a daily basis, and I'll hit on sort of two portions of that because there's two different lenses. One is changing how we learn, and the other is changing what we learn. And actually, I'll add in a third, which is how we actually create learning. So there's really three different pieces. So let's start with like how we learn. The reality is like we all remember our macro learning journeys. So where we have started to learn an entire new skill, or going to university, or just like that big moments in time. But the reality is a significant portion. I mean, some studies show 70, some show 90% of the learning actually happens through the day-to-day interactions and the social learning elements of it. And so we now have this, like I mentioned it earlier, a new thought partner with some of these LLMs that are out there. And now they're getting better every single day. I do know that there are hallucinations and times that there's ways to prompt them to really make them a authoritative expert on topics. So we have to think about it from a learning perspective. Okay, great. Yes, you still need the structure and the guidance because learning by definition is hard. You are attempting to do something that you are not capable of doing before. Okay. The next thing is ultimately like what we actually need to learn is changing because you have that element of it's no different than like an accountant when calculators came out. Yes, their role change or Excel or whatever tool like has evolved the accountant role. They have changed what they actually need to know. And at first you're like, well, wait, you still need to know how to do math. Well, yeah, you do need to know how to do math so you don't end up missing a decimal point or a comma or something like that and screwing up everyone's paychecks and things along that way. But the reality is like, I don't want people spending time just doing long division. I want them actually thinking about how do those numbers actually strategically change what we're doing within the business. So just like that happened, now that's happening with us with our tools because there are a lot of things that you used to need to teach that you don't. I mean, you look at some of the tools, software engineers still need to understand architecture and still need to understand syntax and how applications work. But the reality is like, I don't need you to memorize every single syntax of a framework or a language because I've got tools like Replit and Lovable and Bolt and others that will actually augment my knowledge of a human and help me solve problems faster. So that's a really important thing. And then the third is how we actually create learning. The reality is like everything's changing so fast, which is incredibly challenging for someone creating curriculum. It's also incredibly enjoyable because you're constantly taking on new challenges. Well, one of the things that we think about is like, well, how do I use that as a actual production partner? I do not believe that in the near future, you are taking humans completely out of the loop because of that expertise required and the fact that if it is truly new knowledge, all the LLMs are just based on current knowledge. If it hasn't been trained on it, you need new subject matter expertise. But the reality is like, I don't need a subject matter expert spending days and weeks building out a outline. I can have a outline in 30 seconds with a lot of these models, maybe a little bit longer if you're using a deep research model. And then my goal as a subject matter expert is to really challenge and validate that knowledge. And also, is this the best thing for the individual that I'm learning? So we're able to personalize learning in a way that we never have before. Like I can understand who you are, what you know, your tech stack, your industry, and apply things that used to be that one size fits all. Okay, great. I'm giving you the same thing to everyone and actually personalize it to your experience. That creates a much better experience from a learner standpoint because now I don't feel like I'm doing a Hello World app. I actually feel like I'm applying this to my work.
Yeah, we're going through a lot of changes in the learning space. And like you said, it's coming at us from so many different angles. And I don't remember who said this quote, but it was quite recent, I think, where they said that the top skill now and going into the future is learning how to learn, right? And so during our conversation today, we've talked about how AI is changing not just the skills organizations need, but also the way that people learn those skills in the first place. And with technology that's moving as fast as AI is, I think it can be hard to predict what the future is going to look like. I mean, I'm personally hesitant to try to look beyond just a year or two with how fast things are moving. So, given all of this uncertainty, my last question for you is what steps can organizations take today to prepare their workforce for the future as best as possible?
Yeah, this is such a key point, and we have to keep calling this out and talking about it. I believe Thomas Friedman wrote about this in Thank You for Being Late, where there's a new social contract that has happened with none of us signing any official contract. Like it used to be that, hey, you went to school, you got a skill set, you went on to the job and you had that career forever. And like, yes, there would be like upskilling and changes, but the reality is like you didn't need to completely overhaul your knowledge and skill set every couple of years. Well, the reality is that social contract has changed. You do have to upskill and reskill yourself constantly. Like it used, like I can't even say years now. This is a always on thing that we all have to be focused on. So one is, as organizations, we have to build the culture and focus in understanding that that is the new environment. Having people realize that, like, yes, you are always going to have to be learning and developing new skills. No matter how quickly you're able to learn something, there's something new there the next day that once you're done. We also have to, like I said, create time, create environments that empower people to have that. And I think it's so important that we really evangelize and use testimonials and individual stories to help people see what the future state can be. We also have to focus on, like you said, how to learn, the durable skills, how to learn, how to communicate, just like being able to take those skill sets and apply them to whatever's next. Because the reality is, there are occasional 0 to 1 topics that you have to learn, but the reality is most build off of something that you already have contextual knowledge of. And so we just have to realize, like, hey, you're not learning something completely new, but it is going to change constantly. So in order to build that future ready workforce, we have to realize that this is not like a surface level checkbox that we take. It's literally a cultural change and a mindset change. You brought up a quote. I love the quote, or the old adage, where it's basically like the CFO walks into the CEO's office, says this line item about learning and development. Like, what happens if we spend all this money and people leave? And the CEO's response is, what happens if what happens if we don't spend it and they stay? You have to constantly be investing in your talent if you really want a high performing culture. And I think that's just the mindset we all have to have.
I like that. I need to remember this quote. I don't know this little anecdote story, but I like it. I like it. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Gary, thank you so much for sharing your insights on closing the AI and data skills gap and giving us a sneak peek into what the road ahead looks like and how we can better manage this moving forward. To our listeners, our tech transformed community, thank you for tuning in. If you want to find out more about what we discussed, head on over to www.multiverse.io. It's multiverse.io. And if you found this episode valuable, please follow, rate, and share. Join the conversation on X and LinkedIn at EM360 Tech, or visit our website for more expert insights.